NSG Pilkington, North America. Here today is David Imbrogno. David is the plant manager at the float facility that's in Rossford, Ohio. David, thanks again for joining me.
No, thank you for having me, Kyle.
Appreciate it. So yeah, what we wanted to do today is typically we bring people in and do tours. I mean, we tour thousands of people at our float facilities every year. And it's really unfortunate that we can't do it right now in the days of COVID and the days of social distancing. But it's still, it's a really fun environment. It's great to go through these float lines. I'm kind of a glass nerd, so I really enjoy this experience. But I think most people do when they come through our plant. But instead of doing an actual tour, what we wanted to do today is kind of a virtual tour and have David just give you a brief introduction about who we are, what our plan is, some of the things that we do. He's gracious enough to kind of join me today. So thanks again, David. Appreciate it. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. Let me try and get us set up here to share. How's that coming across, Kyle?
Looks good.
Excellent. Very good. So if you were here, I'd have the pleasure and the privilege of introducing you to several members of our salary team, but unfortunately we'll have to save that for another time. As Kyle mentioned, we do tours a lot, and really we're trying to make sure that we change the perception of what manufacturing is today. It's not manufacturing from our parents or from our grandparents. We do our best here at Rossford to try and make sure that we feel comfortable with allowing our 15-year-old sons or daughters come to work. So if you were here for a tour, you would see a lot better from what I'm going to show you than the video, but we'll do our best to try and work our way through it. So welcome. This is us. We have a very big facility, actually almost 2 million square feet. To the left of this, and I'll try and move the mouse and see if that works, but this big part over here is really what we're going to talk about, and that's the float operation. The operation over on this side is actually an assembly operation. These two float furnaces, we have two that roughly produce 1,100 tons of molten glass a day that we turn into different pieces, different rectangles of different sizes, different shapes, different thicknesses, different colors, and most of that, roughly 80% of that goes into the automotive industry. Some of that goes into NSG internal facilities, but a lot of that we're selling out on the automotive market. And then the other percentage of what we make here goes into the architectural market. You can see some of the glass, what we call cullet, that broken up glass. So when we produce glass here, most of the melt, 40 to 60% of it, is actually made up of crushed up glass that we recycle. So we've been recycling in this facility and in the industry, in glass manufacturing, well before recycling was sexy. So if we move on to the next slide, just a general overview. And again, if you were sitting here, I'd take the time to really get into why is this important to us. So we take one of the 5 or 6 slides that we're going to talk about, and we try and put our team goal up there in front of everybody, because it's critically important that we all understand why we're here. So we're a customer service organization that safely produces quality glass with world-class yields. If you were here 10 years ago, we would be talking about safely producing glass. We've added in the yield part, and most recently, within the last 3 years, we've really added in the customer service organization. And as we'll talk about here on the next slide, the key for us is making sure that we separate ourselves from the other big players in the glass industry. We want to make sure that we're partnering and building that relationship such that you want to come to Rossford and you want to visit us and you want to spend time with us. And oh, by the way, we sell some glass, and we would love to partner up with you and figure out how we can make that relationship work. And we take that servant leadership and we propagate that throughout the entire facility. So the entire salary team is engaged, all the leaders are engaged, the hourly folks are engaged, and hopefully if you were here, you'd see a whole bunch of smiling people when we went out on the floor. So our first customer and the most important people that we serve are our folks on the floor. We do have a bargaining unit here, which means we are unionized. The steelworkers, Local 9, proud to be in that relationship. Several of these pictures are those folks that are doing all the hard work for us and making sure that we continue to move on. So the top picture over here is actually in our hot end control room. This is an individual running some glass through a glass washer to do a quality inspection. Several of these are our maintenance individuals who really make this thing keep going. And last but not least, we have an operator over here on the fork truck. So we have a lot of different things and a lot of different opportunities to make sure that we can keep everybody served and keep everybody moving along so that we can service the glass industry. A little bit on our history. Ironically, we've been here a very long time. So for those that are younger, they'll know us as Pilkington or NSG, but for most of all of Rossford and the surrounding areas will remember us from LOF days. So in 1898, Edward Ford decided to leave God's country, which is Pennsylvania, Ford City, Pennsylvania, actually where his father had a glass manufacturing facility, and took a raw car full of workers and said, Daddy, I'm going to go do this on my own. And he set out to find a river that he could utilize for transit, a railway system, and some natural gas, and maybe even some raw materials, and settled here. So this town was actually founded by Edward Ford. The name of Rossford is his wife's maiden name, Ross, and his last name, Ford. Literally, this entire facility built this town, and that all began in 1898. So some of those buildings from 1898 still actually sit on our property. So a lot of really beautiful heritage here. If you move that forward a little bit to 1930, glass capital of the world, for sure, of the United States is here in Toledo, Ohio. And the big three, Libby, Owens, and Ford, decided to come together and build the facility that really we're known for as LOF. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, that LOF company was actually in Japan teaching a small little regional player in Japan how to make glass by the name of Nippon Sheet Glass, which is NSG. So as we move down the page, you'll notice that in 2020, we actually carry the name NSG, but as early as 1940s and 1950s, NSG and LOF sort of had a relationship going. 1986, Pilkington, an English glass maker that is global, purchased LOF, and we became Pilkington at that point in time. And then in 2006, Nippon Sheet Glass, NSG, purchased Pilkington. So a lot of really strong heritage here in this facility, and we're proud of it. So if we look at NSG Global, right now we have manufacturing operations or sales and distributors literally everywhere in over 100 countries. Roughly $6 billion in sales and a whole bunch of people, 27,000-ish employees at this point in time. So I mentioned earlier, the most important people we serve are folks on the floor. And if we do our job as leaders and we do our jobs in the facility, we have the opportunity to delight a whole bunch of customers. And these are just some of the glass glazers or the automotive folks that I'm sure are household names, but new to this sheet is people such as the University of Toledo. And if you were here, I'd talk you through, I think we did 30 school tours in the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we're unable to do that right now with the pandemic that's going on, but we've been bringing in school tours and college kids and high school kids. A lot of it is to make sure that we can communicate what the industry looks like right now for self-preservation, because we need to make sure that we can keep this facility running so that I can retire from here and my children can retire from here, and we can keep Rossford big and booming. So this is where it's going to get a little bit complicated. You got to use your imagination, but this would typically be the slide where I tell you how we're going to make sure we keep you safe. And I want to talk on that a little bit. So these are just a couple pictures, but the manufacturing facility within the four walls is highly automated at this point in time. So you may look at the external of the building and go, oh, that's a little bit run down, and it is. We've been here since 1898. But once you walk in the doors, we do our best to make sure that we're a world-class organization once you come in here. So we have the newest technology, and we're making some of the best glass products available on the market. So you were to walk out on the floor with us, we will make sure we stay on what we call the green walkways. So we have walkways throughout the entire facility where we can separate pedestrians and any type of vehicle. We stop at all stop signs, and that's a behavior that we teach because we know that if we can stop at stop signs, we'll pay attention to everything else that's really, really important for us. We'd have on some high vis. We'd also have on safety glasses. It's a little bit noisy in our facility, but nothing to the point where you have to wear hearing protection. But for those that have sensitive ears, with me being one of those as I get older in age, hearing protection is here. We do have moving vehicles, so we have maintenance carts, we have fork trucks, we have cranes, we have track mobiles, we have payloaders, we have a lot of other moving vehicles. So we'll make sure that we keep you safe if you're here and keep you to the green mile. And we would stop and make sure we wait for recognition to make sure that everyone understands each other, and we would communicate that way. We're not a tie kind of guy here, so we don't wear ties because there's some safety concerns, as well as rings and hoop earrings. So we would make sure all your jewelry is taken off and keep that safe. And the last two bullets, I mean, it seems as though you would be common sense, but you'd be amazed. It's really warm here. So at this point in time, we're just coming up on September, and it's pretty hot and it's pretty humid. So it's over 100 degrees sometimes in our facility. But everything you see is either hot or sharp, so we try not to touch anything. So what would you hear? If we were going to walk into the hot end, you would hear air, you would hear gas flowing, you would hear broken glass, you would see some broken glass on the floor. We do our best to keep everything clean, but it's a facility that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So when everyone's sitting at home opening presents on Christmas morning, we have a lot of dedicated people who are giving up those holidays to make sure we can keep up producing glass. And I would tell you that you have homework. So if we were sitting upstairs in the conference room, this is where I would say, we're going to get you suited up in your PPE. We're going to walk out onto the floor, but you have homework. You are a fresh set of eyes. So anything you see that doesn't feel right, or that gives you that feeling in your belly that says, "Ooh, why are they doing that?" You got to make sure you say something. At the very least, it'll help us teach, and we love to teach. Or at the very most, we would learn something and we would say, you know what, that's something we need to get better at. So we would write that all down, and we actually have a nice long list of things that we've learned from our tour visitors. And we do our best to make sure that we build upon those. The fresh set of eyes are critical. So see something, say something is what we like to say. Unfortunately, we don't get to walk out on the floor. Kyle, is there any questions on that?
No, David, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through this. You know, it's funny, I talk to people all the time about, you know, you work at a glass plant and, you know, it's a 2 million square foot. It's got these two massive 3,000 degree furnaces and you make millions of square feet of glass. You know, it must be so dangerous. And you're dead on, as, you know, as long as we have some basic rules that we keep people in the right areas, keep them away from dangers, and teach people how to think about their own actions. How do they keep themselves safe? Really, I think, you know, what are our biggest injuries that we have, you know, at least in my experience, it's been like strains and sprains, maybe somebody trips going down the stairs. You know, it's why we always are really stressful on holding handrails and different behavioral things. But, you know, really, those are our injuries now. It's minor things, which is really good, which is really stress aspects.
Absolutely. I mean, when I started 20 some years ago, it was lacerations and it was burns. And they were pretty severe. If you look at where we're at right now, you're exactly right. It's strains and sprains. So a lot of our time and energy is really focusing on how we cannot have to shovel or how we cannot have to do manual work, which is a blessing because it just means we're getting safer and safer and safer.
Yeah. Well, David, you guys do a nice job. And I'm so bummed that we can't bring people out on tours. You know, working in the glass industry for as long as I have, I'm such a nerd. I love going in the factory. I love seeing those big furnaces, getting around that heat, you know, watching all the equipment, watching the people. It is really cool. And I said, I know that's, I'm a bias from a glass guy, but I've not taken anyone on a tour that didn't walk away with that feeling either, that this is cool to see, you know. So yeah. I am bummed that we can't do that. But hopefully, you know, we've put together a nice virtual tour. We have a nice video that we're going to show people, and we've got a lot of different educational programs that we work with people on. So hopefully we can at least give people a sense of what it is and who we are. But thanks again for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you so much, Kyle.
All right. Well, thanks very much, David. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll get moving on with our day. Thanks again.
Take care, everybody. Nice meeting everybody.